fan meetings, I'm going to share a little PowerPoint slide presentation. And my whole reason for doing this, I feel like I have to explain it because I feel like it's actually better to not have that in the way and to be able to just sort of interact face to face without, you know, some screen. But I also recognize that because we're online, we don't have flyers, you know, we don't have things that people can pick up and grab. And I want to make sure that people are able to like write down information that they think might be important that I want to share with you sort of in our introductory remarks. So for that reason, I am going to share my screen and share the little very brief PowerPoint presentation that I put together here. All right, let's see here. Okay, so this is Northwest Wayne Fans April Forum. So welcome. We're excited to have you. My name is Lauren Rousseau. I'm the president of the Northwest Wayne chapter of Families Against Narcotics. I believe that I'm guessing, but maybe it's not a safe guess, that everyone who is with us has some knowledge of FAN and what FAN's all about. But in case we have one or two people who don't, I am kind of wanting to discuss, you know, share our mission. There's about 20 chapters in Michigan. It started in 2008, I want to say, in Macomb County with a single chapter. Our chapter launched in April 2017. And the mission of FAN generally, so this is true of all FAN chapters, as you see on the slide, to provide education, resources, and support to families and individuals who are impacted by addiction. There's a variety of ways that we do this. One of the ways that we serve our mission is with these monthly public forums. So every FAN chapter has a monthly public forum that provides educational speakers and various other, activities or discussions, panel discussions, that type of thing once a month, where you can get together and you can learn from experts, you can share information, etc. So our public forum is always the first Monday of every month. And as you know, right now, because of COVID, we're still doing it via Zoom, also broadcasting it on Facebook Live. We also record every forum and we put them on our YouTube channel, which you see on this PowerPoint slide, NW Wayne Fan. We have forums, speakers on that YouTube channel that go back a couple of years now, I think. So to the extent that, after you have participated in this forum, or maybe you've participated in others, and you're interested in seeing what other topics we have information on, maybe watching another speaker, you can go to our YouTube channel and sort of check out the different, different events, different speakers that we've had. Another way that we serve our mission is through support groups. We have 2 of them. So we have a grief support group that is actually currently meeting live.
Oh, cinnamon toast you made?
Yeah.
Hey, Alfred, could you mute the people? So, okay, let's start over. So we have 2 support groups. One is our grief support group. Right now, that group is meeting live in person, and it's meeting at the PC Alano Club in Canton. It's the first and third Tuesday every month, as you see on here, from 7 to 8:30. And this is a group that is designed to provide support for individuals who've lost a loved one as a result of addiction. We also have our Stronger Together Family and Friends support group, currently meeting via Zoom from 6:30 to 7:30 on the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. There are actually quite a few other Stronger Together Family and Friends support groups at other chapters as well, and that are also meeting virtually. So there's an opportunity to participate in these groups a variety of different days, not just our Northwest Wayne, which meets again the second and fourth Tuesday of every month. Jackie Sanders is with us. She is essentially the leader and creator of our Stronger Together Family and Friends support group. And I'd asked her to say a few words about that group. Jackie, you want to jump in? And Alfred, you're going to have to let her jump in. Jackie, are you with us?
Jackie Sanders?
Yeah, she was with us earlier. She was going to talk a little bit about our family and friends group.
Yeah.
She is unmuted.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that. So Stronger Together offers support to family members who are being impacted by a loved one's substance use disorder. That could be your child, it might be your spouse or a sibling who is struggling. And after a while, it begins to take a real toll on the rest of the family. But you don't have to go through this alone. We can show you how you can return a sense of normalcy to your family, regardless of the decisions that your loved one is making. Our group follows an original 12-step recovery plan that has been written specifically for supportive family members. So when you come to a meeting, there's going to be an opportunity for you to share your own personal concerns, your own current situation. And then we offer each other suggestions, resources, encouragement. It's just one family helping out another family. We meet the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month, like Lauren said, 6:30 p.m. on Zoom. We are looking forward to being able to meet face-to-face in person again at the Municipal Complex in Canton. If you have questions, I'm always happy to talk about family recovery. My name is Jackie Sanders, and my contact information is in the chat. Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I appreciate that. Okay, I also wanted to share a little bit of information about our Hope Not Handcuffs program. This is the program where we essentially partner with certain police departments in order to provide assistance to people who are seeking recovery from addiction. This is a program that's been was launched in FAN sort of generally in February of 2017, and we are almost up to 5,500 people who have been assisted into recovery, into treatment, and ultimately recovery as a result of this program. So this is a program where we have, we work with police stations, and also you can apply online to seek assistance getting into treatment. And we accept community members. I shouldn't say accept. We invite, we beg community members to join us and be trained as angels to help with, work with individuals who are, needing assistance into treatment. Hey, Alfred, I hear someone who's unmuted. If you could take care of that, that would be great.
Working on it.
Yep. And so we are really super excited because we just launched the Hope Not Handcuffs program through our chapter with the Wayne Police Department and the Garden City Police Department. Just happened on March 16th. We've been sort of busily training people who want to participate as angels or otherwise. Prior to that, we always need additional angels, but we're super excited that we just launched this. Our board member, our chapter board member, Jeff Jones, is also our Hope Not Handcuffs volunteer coordinator. And so I'm going to invite him, Jeff, he's with us, to say a few words about Hope Not Handcuffs and angel trainings. Go ahead, Jeff. And so now I got you busy here, Alfred. You need to unmute Jeff now. I think he's unmuted.
He's unmuted.
Yep.
Yes, I'm also very excited that we were able to launch after such a long time, and this past month, and I'm very excited. But yes, we always do need additional angels, whether for our area or whatever area you're in. And I believe she has the link up on the page to locate where you link to become an angel. Our angels are our volunteers that meet someone that is suffering from a substance dependency at a partnering police station. And they go through training on how to assist these people with the process of getting into some form of treatment in lieu of jail or any other outcome. It's a very beneficial program, and it saves lives. So we're definitely in need of additional volunteers. If anyone is interested, there's a lot of tasks that can be done. You can be angels that meet with people, but we also, due to COVID, do a lot of assistance on the telephone through the Hope line. So they're looking for volunteers for both roles. So if you are interested, I'll put it in the chat too, the direct link to the angel training, in case anyone wants to check it out while they're on this session. And again, the information is all listed on the slide right here.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Jeff. And yeah, so for April, you have 2 trainings that are coming up. So April 8th at 6 p.m. and April 24th, which is a Saturday at 11 a.m. And again, you've got that link there, familiesagainstnarcotics.org// hope not handcuffs. If you were to click that and you scroll down, you'll see a big picture on the screen that says, become an angel. And if you click on that and then you scroll down, then you see what you need to do in order to register for the training. So again, we are always looking for additional people to participate in this program if you're interested in it. And by the way, if you're interested also just in learning more about it, maybe you're not sure whether you want to sign up to be an angel, you want more information first. Also on this PowerPoint slide, you can see our email address. Do not hesitate to shoot us an email if you want more information, and we can connect you with someone who can give you that information. All right, and then lastly on this PowerPoint slide, I kind of have a pitch for our Facebook page. I manage our Facebook page, so as a result, you know, I'm kind of attached to it. But I put a lot of information on there, including all of our events. So it keeps you up to speed on our, you know, when our grief support groups meetings are happening, our family support group meetings are happening. Our public forums are posted on there as events, and then other articles and things are also posted there. So we invite people to, you know, like our page, and then you can check out the different things that we're doing. Okay, let's see. Alfred, we need another mute.
Working on it.
Yep, thank you. All right, so now it is my privilege to introduce our speaker for tonight, and I'm super excited that we have Dr. Geri Lynn Utter, who is going to be speaking with us today. I'm going to kind of give you a little information. Most of it is on this PowerPoint slide, but I'm going to share probably a little bit more than what's on the PowerPoint slide. So Dr. Geri Lynn Utter, PsyD, is a clinical psychologist who specializes in working with individuals diagnosed with both substance use disorders and severe mental illness. Throughout her career, she's conducted psychological evaluations for the courts on incarcerated individuals in an effort to ensure that they receive the appropriate mental health and drug and alcohol treatment during and post-release from prison. Currently, Dr. Utter works in the medical affairs team at Orexo Pharmaceuticals, a specialty pharmaceutical company dedicated to developing and manufacturing medication designed to help individuals with opioid dependence. Over the past year, Orexo has expanded its portfolio into digital therapeutics, the digital therapeutic space, with digital technologies designed to support individuals with depression, problematic drinking, and opioid use disorder. Dr. Utter is passionate about working with individuals and families who've been impacted by drug and alcohol addiction, as both her mother and father struggled with addiction throughout their lives. In April of 2020, she released her first book, Mainlining Philly: Survival, Hope, and Resisting Drug Addiction, which came from her desire to share her story and instill hope. In an effort to overcome the stigma associated with addiction and other mental health issues, Dr. Utter continues to provide education and spread awareness. I am now going to unshare and turn this over to our speaker, Dr. Utter.
Thanks, Lauren. I appreciate the introduction. So thank you, everybody, for giving me this opportunity, especially Dara. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to participate in this fan meeting. Just looking at the PowerPoint and seeing everything that you do, you know, Hope Not Handcuffs and all these, you know, support groups for family members is just really nice and encouraging to see. So I really appreciate that. I'm going to try to keep this format as open and collaborative as possible. I don't want to sit up here and talk at everyone for the next hour. So I encourage, you know, questions or, you know, any type of comments are definitely welcome. I'll start off by just talking a little bit more about the book, why I decided to write the book, and then I'll kind of pause a little bit. And if anybody has any questions or feedback, that'd be greatly appreciated. And we can kind of just take it from there. So the book, Mainlining Philly, an interesting name, because if you're familiar with the street terminology, does everybody know what mainlining means? I don't know if I see Laura shaking her head. So mainlining is a street term for people who shoot drugs. So we decided to call the book Mainlining Philly because it's a lot about, drug addiction and drug abuse, but there's also a beautiful part of the Philadelphia suburbs known as the Main Line. And the Main Line is where like Princess Grace Kelly lived, and it's a beautiful area. Villanova University's out there. So it was kind of like a spoof, on words a little bit. So initially, when I went to write this book, I just wanted to do it for myself. I wanted it to be a memoir format, and I kind of just wanted to get everything out there that had happened to me, over certain points of my life. There's a lot that I left out, but I was just trying to like organize everything that kind of happened. So I thought I was going to write this memoir and just have it for myself. And then as I wrote it, I felt more and more compelled to share my story. And my story I kept pretty private. Because, growing up, I had parents that struggled with addiction. My mom was a binge drinker from as young as I can remember, and then graduated onto abusing prescription pain medication, and then eventually became an IV heroin user in her early 40s. And my dad struggled with heroin addiction in the 60s and 70s. And as he said, he went from the frying pan into the fire and started to abuse methamphetamines in the 70s and then into the 80s until he got arrested for manufacturing and distributing methamphetamines, cocaine, marijuana, quaaludes, any other type of drug that you can think of. So I was always very guarded, and I felt very ashamed of, my family's behavior and what was happening behind closed doors. So I always made a very concerted effort to kind of hide that. And I, tried to dress well. I tried to act, appropriate. And I kind of tried to closet that part of my life because what happened behind closed doors was pretty embarrassing and shameful at times. And I felt that I didn't have a lot of people to talk to. So I figured, writing the book would be something that would be an inspiration for other people. And I know that there has to be other people out there like me, a child of addicts. And, as a young child, chronologically, I suffered and struggled alongside my parents, but all the way through adulthood. My mom has been clean this time around for 4 months. So December 4th, she agreed to go to rehab, and I was the first one to get up and take her. And she went into rehab this time around for benzodiazepines and alcohol, and she has been good since December 4th. So I'm happy and I'm proud about that. But really, I had a pretty, wild ride growing up. My parents' addiction, especially my father, led to him going to prison when I was about 5 years old. And I ended up on the street as a result of that because my mother was so impacted by my dad going away. And literally that day in court, my dad, I remember hearing him explain the story to me. He was taking his jewelry off and taking everything off and handing it to my mother in the courtroom because he knew that he was going to jail. And my mom at this point, had really no clue that he was going to go away. And he turned around to her and he said, "You're going to have to run this business," the business being this drug kind of empire that my father had built up, and said, "I want you to kind of take care of Geri Lynn, and I want you to do this." And my mom had the opposite type of reaction, and she fell apart because she was very dependent on my dad. So that really spurred her drinking, and then her starting to do Valium and do other pills because she was really codependent with my dad, and she fell apart, and she ended up with my sister, my half sister, with her father. So they got together while my dad was in jail, and I was homeless. My dad from jail managed to get her sister, my aunt, to pick me up off the street, found out where I was, and then she took care of me until my father was released from prison some months later. And I went back into his custody, and then from there, my parents kind of decided to reconcile, and they got back together. And my dad cleaned up his act and stopped doing and dealing drugs and was okay for a period of time. My mom was cleaned up a little bit, but was still binge drinking. And we were okay for a little bit of time. We were okay from the time I was about 5 to 12. Now, my okay is different than other people's okay. It's all relative. During that time, my dad was, clean from drugs and alcohol, but we lived in a really bad part of the city. He was trying to make ends meet. He had a 9th grade at best education and made his living off of selling drugs. So we struggled and we didn't have a lot at that point in time. And my mom was a working hairdresser. So they tried to get back together. They did. The domestic violence was very intense because when my mom would drink, that's when she would have a voice in the marriage, and then it would get really physical and they would fight. And my fingers got really, really good at dialing 911. So the amount of times that the cop showed up at my house, kind of became somewhat normal. And then after that, my dad ended up buying a bar when I was about 13. He had this great idea to buy a bar, and he named the bar Utter Nonsense after my maiden name, which is Utter, in the middle of Kensington. And Kensington is a section of Philadelphia that's known as the largest open air drug market along the East Coast, if not the whole entire country. And what that means is that you can get any drug you want. You can get heroin, you can get fentanyl, you can get crack, you can get coke, you can get marijuana, you can get, angel dust, anything that you want, you can get. So he did that. And then my mom, and I'll take a break after this to take questions. And my mom went right back to the guy, his name was Eddie, that she was with when my dad went to jail the first time. So she found him and they found each other again after my dad bought this bar and started to cheat on her. And they got together and they had my little sister, who is now 26, but she was born when I was around 16. And because of the drug and alcohol issues that my mom had and my sister's father had, I ended up formally adopting her. And I took custody of her. I actually fought my own mom for custody and my stepdad for her when she was 10 and I was about 25, 26 years old at that time. So I'll kind of stop right there. I just wanted to give you a little bit of my history and see if there's any questions, because I will definitely get more into talking about what it's like to be, a family member, specifically a child of someone who struggles with addiction. But I'll kind of stop right there and see if anybody has any questions and see if there's any questions I can answer or comments, and then we can kind of take it from there.
So I think we can probably start. If people have some questions, we can try it with people sort of just jumping in. And if that turns out not to work, which sometimes doesn't work that well in a Zoom meeting, then maybe we can all. There's also the ability with reactions, I think, to kind of raise your hand, and I can see that, or you can put something in the chat. That's another way you can ask a question. So if anyone has any questions for Geri Lynn at this point, feel free.
I see Laura.
I have a question. I just have a question that sounds pretty overwhelming. And were you angry, or were you depressed or upset? I mean, it must have been very upsetting. But I guess if that was your normal, I'm just wondering how it affected you at the time.
Yeah, that's a good question. So as a kid, I kind of went into this like survival mode, but I know this sounds crazy, but my parents, as young as when my dad got out of jail when I was 5 and he got clean, my parents were super open with me about their struggles. And my dad talked to me in a way that a 5 or 6-year-old kid could understand. And he said to me, Geri Lynn, that things have been really tough. And obviously I knew, because I was, out on the street, hitchhiking, getting in people's cars I didn't know, staying in people's houses I didn't know. And I was just so happy to be back with my mom and dad. But he explained to me that because of, their struggles with drugs and because of their struggles with alcohol, that was kind of a result of the life that we lived and their consequences that I struggled with. For example, after he got out of jail, we moved into a 2-room, not 2-bedroom, a 2-room efficiency where my mom was cooking on a hot plate and there was like roaches just like all over. But he said, Geri Lynn, you have like three jobs in your life. He's like, number one is, your family. and loving your family and sticking by your family. Number 2 is your education, because I don't want you to end up how me and mom are struggling paycheck to paycheck. And number 3 is faith. Like, I don't care what you believe in or what God you believe in, but you got to believe in something and somebody. And he started to talk to me about addiction by saying that it was a monster that lived inside my brain at 5. So I'm like, what's this dude talking about, a monster that lives inside my brain? Like, you got to be kidding me right now. But my dad had this very effervescent personality, and he kind of was like a force. And it wasn't just with me, it was with everyone. He was this very good looking, deep voice, like charismatic person. So when he spoke, I never felt lectured. He spoke to me like, I don't want to say like a peer, but like a person. He didn't speak at me like a kid. And he said, because me and mom struggled, our brains are different, and, we can pass that stuff on to you. And he said, and, there's a monster that lives inside your brain. So when you get older and when you grow up, and your friends are going to ask you to smoke weed and they're going to ask you to drink, and that's normal. He said, but you might be different than your other friends who try it. And I'm like, I don't know. What do you mean? And he's like, well, you can wake up that monster. And once you wake up that monster that lives inside your brain, then you could risk being like me and mom, where, I went to jail and I used drugs and I couldn't stop. And like, we had a really hard time. So when they were clean, they spent this time with me, providing me with this education about addiction. Here my dad is, 9th grade dropout, probably could read at a 6th grade reading level, because what got him through school was drawing. His teachers just passed him up in a grade, and he was a good drawer. So he kind of just went through and fell under and flew under the radar. But like, the way he talks to me resonated with me, and I wanted to listen to him. I didn't feel lectured. And the other thing that my mom was good at, both my parents, was building my self-confidence. So like, no matter what I was doing in life, what the goal was, whether it was like trying to get the honor roll, or whether it was going to apply to be a doctor, because my dad was still alive then, he would look at me and be like, kid, you can do anything you put your mind to. So he always believed in me. So like, I did feel love by my parents, but it just wasn't, it was overshadowed sometimes by their addiction. And at a young age, I think I kind of realized that, but it didn't mean that I didn't hate their guts. And it didn't mean that I wasn't angry and hurt by the shit that they were doing, right? Like, I was still like, why can't you be normal? Like, why do we have to live like this? But I never felt unloved. I still felt loved, but I felt sometimes, like I came 2nd, 3rd, and 4th to their drugs and to their alcohol. And that was really painful. So what I did for myself, because my dad was so big on education, was I just kept on taking it as far as I could, right? Like, I'm going to get my bachelor's, and then I'm going to get my master's, and then I'm going to become a doctor. But I specifically picked psychology because I wanted to understand addiction, and I wanted to use that to heal myself. Because if I understood that addiction was a neurobiological disease, then I could be more empathetic towards the crappy stuff that my parents did or didn't do for me. And that's how it helped me take my anger, which is validated anger, and really learn to look at them differently and demonstrate empathy, as opposed to just being so angry and mad at them, because me being angry and mad at them is not good for me either. So education kind of has saved me in more ways than one.
A lot. That's wonderful.
Thanks.
Geri Lynn, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So oftentimes people who, have addiction in their family, and particularly your situation where both of your parents struggled with it, will ultimately become, develop addiction themselves.
Yeah.
So what happened with you in that respect?
So I think it goes back to those conversations as a 5-year-old about the monster, waking up the monster. But those conversations, the nomenclature got more sophisticated as I got older, right? Like, my dad would still talk to me, but then I got to hear more stories about how addiction impacted his life, going away to jail, doing time in jail, and kind of like him sharing more age appropriately, I think, than, as I got older. And I think that that's something that really saved me, because nothing was off limits as far as my parents being honest about their struggles. And I think what was unique about it was because they were honest, I was able to point to exactly what was happening because of their issues, and because I lived it. And I knew that I didn't want it for myself. And also, that monster scared the shit out of me. Like, I didn't want to wake that monster up. I'm like, hell no. And to this day, I haven't woken that monster up. Like, I'll have a glass of wine, and I've become, because of what I've been through and the trauma that I've experienced, I've become neurotic. So that's how it scarred me. I've become a control freak. So I am very vigilant on what I drink and how much I drink, because I know that it could be like opening up Pandora's box for me, and that the way that I respond could be different from somebody else who doesn't have a genetic predisposition. So I think my saving grace, honestly, even though people will probably think I'm crazy, was my parents, and was the way that they talked to me about it, and they were open to me about it. And I felt like it was a collaboration, and that they were talking to me like a human, and not like how some parents do, which is kind of just talking at me and not kind of explaining to me why I shouldn't do drugs. Like, tell me why. And my dad would be like, well, take a look around. Like, look around, look at the life that we have now, look at what happened, look at how I struggled. So I think that rawness and that realness really helped me to just be like, you know what? I can live through your experience, Dad. It's cool. I don't have to even dip my toe in, because I don't want to live this life anymore. So
Makes a lot of sense.
I have a quick question, because in my mind, you dipped your toe in when you took a glass of wine, and you just drew the lucky straw that glass of wine didn't turn you into an alcoholic, even though you have the knowledge and had the information and saw the writing on the wall and felt the consequences. That's almost as though saying your desire not to become an alcoholic was beat by seeing the outcome of your parents' lifestyle, when in all reality, somebody that maybe had all that same information or none of that same information took that drink, and it was so different for them that it did awake the monster, just that one drink. And so I say all that with the utmost respect, and because I'm a devil's advocate type of person, because I'm always wanting to learn more and more, don't you feel you kind of just got lucky that one drink didn't awake the monster?
No. Just because I think the way that the education that I got about alcohol and drug addiction really was on a deeper level than I think the majority of people get it. So I realized that, and through talking to my parents, that they drank for other reasons. It wasn't just to necessarily feel buzzed or get drunk. They were drinking because they were numbing out other things and other pain. And in their way, they shared that with me. Also, I think because I had it was almost like, the way that I look at it now was almost like training, because it wasn't one conversation, it wasn't two. It was conversations, but it was life experiences. So when you go in to something and when you look at alcohol, the way that I feel, or drugs, the way that I feel like that it couldn't be a crutch. It couldn't be something that I depended on to make myself feel better, and that I wasn't using it for that way because I had already had healthier coping strategies. So I think that I would have to disagree, just because I remember my own internal dialogue. Like, even though on spring break, I wanted to try and have a drink, I still played those tapes in my head. Like it was almost like I could hear my dad's voice. So for me, I just felt like those conversations were always with me and they stayed with me. So I felt that I had that kind of control through him, not to just run away with it. Though I was curious to see like what it tasted like and how maybe I would feel and I would react. But I think my control, like my need to have control over myself, that could have been like a side effect of what the trauma was, because I couldn't control anything else. So if I can control myself and my decisions, that kind of made my anxiety feel better. So for me, it was kind of like the opposite. Like drinking would put me in a space that I wasn't comfortable with because I need control, if that makes sense. But I never really saw myself as being lucky. Because I felt like I had that education from my parents way before that I felt almost like equipped to at least try to take a drink. If that,
I just mean lucky in that you are not an alcoholic because you don't have the disease of alcoholism, that you were lucky enough not to awaken that, because and you were able to use mind over matter and think about not wanting to become an alcoholic and use that. Whereas I think some people do use it as a coping skill, but some people all just have the disease of alcoholism where it's a compulsion and not a coping mechanism necessarily, which I realize that can get messy. But to me, it's just, you're just not an alcoholic because, you know what I mean?
yeah, I just feel like I never gave myself the I feel like I never gave myself the opportunity to let it get, ever to that point. I still feel like you have to feed it. And I wasn't going to feed it because drinking on a regular basis is not really something that I'm afraid to do. I'm just afraid. So yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't want to turn it into a debate, but I understand what both of you guys are saying, because I'm sorry, my thing's not working right. But I grew up in a family where my grandparents and cousins, like the generation above my parents, were extreme alcoholics and drug users. And so growing up, I got to firsthand see all that and listen to the phone calls, stuff that got left on the answering machine. Not as drastic as what you lived through, because I was still a generation down. But my dad would explain it to me. You had the monster. He explained it to luck. And he always said, how far do you want to push your luck? You don't know where that line is for you. And so the way I am today is I'm extremely stressed out and anxious. So I choose not to drink now because I have that fear of becoming an alcoholic. If I start, I'm not going to stop, because I feel that compulsion. And how far do I want to push my luck? And my daughter, now we're 3 generations down, and she heard all the stories and everything, but maybe they weren't close enough where she's seen it, because now she's a heroin addict. And I just, she heard the stories. So I understand both sides, that your parents talk to you, and I understand the side of luck. I think it's a little bit of both. And that's it. Like I said, I didn't want to turn it into a debate, but I see both sides of the having it in your head all the time, because that's me, and then the luck.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's all.
No. Thanks for sharing that. And to be completely honest, we have science that speaks about what parts of the brain get activated when it comes to addiction, but I don't know if it's that sophisticated yet to where we have figured out scientifically how deep it goes, like what makes one person kind of take that leap versus another person. We just know that there's a genetic predisposition, but that's only a part of it. The other part, if you just look at pure science, is external factors. So for all intents and purposes, based upon my story, I had ridiculous external factors, trauma, all that kind of stuff, and genetic predisposition, and I'm here. So, I don't know what it is at the end of the day. I, as a scientist and as a psychologist for myself, I need some type of justification. Like, I need some type of like reason why, because that's what psychologists do. Like, we want to know why. Like, why does the person act this way? Because knowing why for me, or being able to at least understand why, has been very helpful on my personal journey. So I think, yeah, that's why I kind of try to wrap it up that way for myself, just because it's helped me. Because if I haven't conceptualized my own life and people close to me in my life that have done terrible things to me, because of their addiction, I don't think I would be able to like be in the same room as them. So why, the why part has really helped me on my own personal journey.
Geri Lynn, there was a question that was mentioned by one of our Facebook watchers, and sort of expanded upon by someone within our Zoom community here, having to do with schools. The question was basically what resources or help you experienced, if any, through your schooling, both like elementary school, high school, and even up into to college and yeah, grad school.
Yeah, so my my mom was really, I come from, my mother is 100% Italian, and she was the black sheep of her family. So like drug addiction, like that kind of stuff, like that wasn't happening. There's probably a lot of, alcohol use. They used to make their own wine and stuff. So you have my mom, and then my dad was like big on the education, and my mom was really cool because like there was never stigma or shame with my mom around talking to a counselor, right? Or talking to a mental health. My mom was like, listen, if this person knows more than us and can help as far as like the way you feel, I'm all about it. So what my mom did was pretty cool. When my parents started to go through their divorce, I went all through Catholic school. She reached out to Cora Services, the counseling services. So starting at age 12, I talked to, and I still remember her name because they make a huge difference. Her name was Claudia Carabelli. And I went 2 times a week, and I had lunch with her in the Cora trailer. And I told her about all the crazy shit that was happening in my house. She probably should have called Childline, but this was like 25 years ago, 30 years ago. So that wasn't happening. And then I loved it because like I could talk to somebody on the outside that was kind of like an adult that was there for me, and it helped me. And then I was still able to kind of like be private with like friends about what was going on because I was like super embarrassed. And then in high school, I continued on my mom's kind of like, the advice she initially gave and the practices that she initially put out. And there was a school guidance counselor named Miss Janata. And Miss Janata was awesome. I would go see her. Like there'd be days when I didn't have like lunch money, or I didn't have, I was up all night because, somebody was trying to literally kill someone with a gun in my house. So like I would show up at school and I would talk to Miss Janata about all this. So she was like a huge part of like being there for me. And then by the time I got to college, I was like, pretty good at reaching out for help. So during my undergrad years, I don't remember, having someone that I talked to on a consistent basis. But when I got out of college, I actually started to see a psychologist. This is the first time I actually saw a psychologist. His name's Dr. Howard Cohen. He was the best. I saw him for over the span of 10 years. And he was actually introduced to me from my best friend Sue, who was supposed to be seeing him, but she saw him like once. And then I was just remember like telling her that I was stressed out, whatever. And I ended up seeing him and having him as a support because again, I was very embarrassed and ashamed about what was going on in my house. So having those supports really, really helped me. And then I also tried Al-Anon when I was younger. And I sat in an Al-Anon meeting and I felt 2 emotions. I felt really good because I was like, oh, thank God, like there's other kids that have like a really screwed up house, right? So that kind of like made me feel better. But then I started to feel myself like getting like very emotional and crying in front of a group of people I didn't know. And I didn't like that. I wasn't ready for that at that time. So I didn't go back. But to answer your question, school counselors were a big part of my process, and I'm grateful for them.
That's really good to know. Really good to hear. Actually, it's not the answer I expected. So,
Yeah.
so I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I got a little message here in the chat indicating that Susan Rowe has a question. Susan, you want to share your question?
Yes, Jerry mentioned about not being turned into, Family Protective Services or something. In my mind, I find that appalling. I think those counselors failed in not, you were 5 years old and you said you were on the street and you were hitchhiking and riding in cars with people you didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want any child to get into the system, but in my mind, you definitely had a guardian angel watching over you. You are very fortunate. Most people would not be that fortunate.
Yeah. Well, when I was 5, 4 and 5, I ended up getting enrolled in Montessori school, but I wasn't in school at that time when that was happening. It was after, when I was really in school. Yeah. Core services at that point in time, I don't ever remember CYS showing up. CYS did show up when I was in high school. And I don't know if that was because of Miss Janata, and what I share with her, or if it was because my parents were at each other's throats at that point and doing everything that they could to, I don't know, hurt each other. And the other, reason could be my dad called on my mom, but it really wasn't because of me. It was because he wanted to hurt my mom. So I don't know, but I remember CYS showing up. And, that was an easy one for us to kind of evade that, because they just wanted to make sure there was food in the fridge and that the house was like semi-clean. And at that point we had gotten evicted and we were living, I was in my teens, I was 16. We were living with an older gentleman because we lost our apartment, and it was me and my sister, who was 3 at that time, probably 3, somewhere around there. I was 16 or 17. So maybe she was younger, maybe 2, but I don't know. She was little, very little, still a baby. And I remember them showing up, and like I said, because we lived in a house that wasn't ours but appeared to be clean and there was food in the refrigerator, that case was opened and closed, real quick. And I know this probably sounds crazy. Even though my parents were screwed up and they did screwed up things, I think I would have been pissed off if CYS was called when I was 16 years old, because I was trying to hold it down and I was taking care of my baby sister at that point. So if CYS showed up and took her and I ended up having to go somewhere, that would have made me even more anxious and sad and nervous. So in a way, at that point in my life, when I was older, I just wanted them out of the picture. And I know that probably sounds crazy, but as a younger kid, as a child, I'm sure that would have been beneficial. But at that point, when they were finally called, I was doing everything I can to like show them that things were okay, because I didn't want my baby sister to be taken. I think.
Are there other questions?
I think Alfred raised it. I don't know.
I think
Yeah.
Alfred did, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I got a statement to start off. Oh, I'm learning so much. I got to tell you, thank you so much. I appreciate what you said about the education you received from your parents, that they purposefully gave you that warning, that education about the problems. I wondered myself about when or how to address this with children and others in my life. And it seems to me that the best time is right away. So, but my question is, seeing that Kensington is the open air drug market that it is, what do you think that, and after you've gone what you've gone through, right? But say there's you don't want to participate in it, you're seeing what's going on, drawing on your professional work, what could you recommend to folks in another community that are seeing things like that or have that around them to do other than fleeing from it? What would you recommend to them?
Do you mean like people who are hanging out, like that are curious, or people who?
No, yeah, my question wasn't clear. So you got the people on the corner and they're on the porch and they're living in the neighborhood and they've got a couple of kids, they're wrapped up in the problems and they see the more serious problems that are going on down the street. What, other than talking to their children and warning them about it, what do you think that they could do to help either break that up or help solve what's going on?
Yeah, so when my dad bought the bar, I was 12 and we lived above it. So when I would go visit my father, I was above the bar. So, and I was there, you know, like hand-to-hand transactions, you know, people dealing. I mean, I was exposed to all of that. They would try to come in the bar and deal out of the bar in the wintertime. And we got stuck up twice at gunpoint because my dad wouldn't let the dealers deal out of the bar. But I think, you know, and I still have family down there that, you know, I guess aren't moving out of the neighborhood and that have children. And I think, you know, what my dad did for me was just really continue to talk to me. And I was on lockdown though. I couldn't go out. So I was not going out with any of the kids in the neighborhood. I was not going, if I wanted to go out because I was going to school in the northeast section of the city, I would have to get a ride out to that section of the city to hang out with my friends. So, yeah, I think the other thing too that's really important if we're going to talk about kids is when you look at adolescents, when you look at young people, they're super, you know, they're a vulnerable population. And number one, it's confidence. But like, think about what happens during academic years. So I've done a lot of evaluation work in the juvenile court system and the adult system. And it breaks my heart because when I evaluate, I do a full psych battery. So I'm looking at their cognitive functioning, I'm looking at their IQ, I'm looking at academic performance, I'm looking at personality. 9 times out of 10, the majority of the kids that I see who have gotten wrapped up are those that had an undiagnosed learning difference or what people will call a learning disorder.
Wow.
So as a kid, you're in 3rd grade, right? You're in 4th grade and you're dyslexic and you're not diagnosed with it, or you're severe ADHD and you haven't been diagnosed with it. You have a hard time staying still and paying attention, and academically you're struggling. So you don't like school. A lot of these kids that don't like school become, you know, the class clown, the one that's always getting in trouble, the one that's acting out. And they're acting out behaviorally because they're having struggles with the way that they learn, or they have a neurodevelopmental disorder like ADHD. And that for a lot of folks is where it starts. The number of evaluations that I've done in the adult system, when I do a full drug and alcohol assessment, I ask them, how old were you the first time you drank or the first time you smoked? And it's usually right around 12 to 13 years old. And then when I dig deeper, I learned that academically there was stuff going on that was never addressed, which kind of bred a perfect opportunity for them to kind of start to, you know, mix around with the drinking and the drugging because school was such a burden and such a problem. So they started to act out behaviorally and it pushed them in that direction. So I think there's a lot of people that overlook how kids are exposed. Yes, you can have a screwed up family life like I did, but academically, let's look at what's going on with them. Because a lot of the times, if there's a learning difference, that's like a breeding ground, if it's not addressed, for early drug and alcohol use that turns into abuse because their confidence is shot to shit because they think they're stupid, they think they're dumb, they're getting bullied, whatever it is. And that kind of really sets the pace for things that can happen, in addition to what the norms are that we think, a chaotic upbringing, you know, not having the supervision from your parents, whatever. School and academics and bullying and things that take place in school, that's a breeding ground. So I think that that's something that we have to do a better job as a society of addressing and looking at, so we can get those kids the right intervention early enough before they kind of go down that road. So I think that's a big piece. I was fortunate if I didn't have any learning differences. So I think I was, you know, fortunate in that regard, but I think that's something that we could do a better job looking out for. And then early education, I have a 6-year-old girl and I have a 9-year-old little boy, and I already started talking to them about the monster in the brain. And I started when my daughter was 5. And they have seen my mom struggle. And they, she smokes cigarettes now. So that's an opportunity. Oh, why is Mimi smoke? Tell me about cigarettes. Mom, have you ever smoked? Yes, I've tried to smoke a cigarette before. Why didn't you do it? Because, I learned that it's bad for I'm honest. I learned that it's bad for my lungs. Both of my kids are into athletics. They always have a soccer ball or a basketball in their hand. I have a girl and a boy. So what do? I talk to them about it based upon what their interests are and what their age level is. And they always want to perform well. So if you're going to smoke, that's going to jack your lungs up, Gregory. You're not going to be able to run as fast. Your reflexes aren't going to be as good. So I've already started talking to them and have used my own mom, who they love, Mimi, as the example. So in my opinion, you can't start young enough.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Are there any other questions? And Alfred, I realize that I'm not able, because I'm not a host for this, I'm not able to see if people are raising their hands. So if anybody is, I suggested people might want to raise their hands, but I'm realizing I'm not seeing it. So if anybody is doing that, I've had other people, I think Dara and Alfred have both sort of chimed in and said, hey, somebody has a question, which I appreciate, and that works too. But just wanted to point that out. So does anyone else have any question or comment?
I have something here from Terry. It says, would you report a situation to child protection today if the same situation that you were in, back in the day? And the answer is yes, and I've had to. So I've as a mandated reporter, I've had to call Childline. There were times when I could relate, to the kid if the kid was a little bit older, but I felt, kind of obligated to do that. So I have made multiple Childline calls, to children in similar situations. I don't know if you could mute. I hear
somebody needs to mute, and I'm looking. It looks like Teresa Broward is not muted. That's the only one I'm seeing that's not muted here. Alfred, could you mute Teresa Broward?
Sorry. Okay. Thanks. So
it's still on.
Oh, yeah.
Alfred, if you could find that.
Yeah, I can't do anything with Teresa for some reason. It sounds like that's going on again.
You're not able to do anything to stop.
Is it me?
Is there Teresa Brower?
No, we had a couple of other folks.
It's the only one that I saw that wasn't muted on my list.
It stopped.
We had 3 others.
Yeah, it stopped. I don't hear it at all anymore. And then the second part of the question was, how is my sister with addiction? So my sister, her name's Dominique. I took custody of her when she was around 10. And she went through it. As far as, just feeling abandoned. My sister has a lot of kind of like abandonment issues, because she felt like she wasn't taken care of the way that she should be. So I had to deal with those emotions. And what's really interesting, and this is in the book too, is my sister's father is that guy, Eddie, right? That my mom kind of hooked up with the first time my dad went to jail. And then she re-hooked up with him again after my dad started to backstreet on her, cheat on her, and buy the bar. So then my mom ends up with Eddie again, right? So what's really interesting about that whole dynamic is that I ended up having to take her away from Eddie and my mom. And my dad at the time, now I stopped talking to my dad for 6 years, from the time I was 16 until I graduated from college. My dad later in life became an alcoholic. So he went from heroin to meth, was clean, bought a bar, became an alcoholic. Now follow me with this one, because this is interesting. Ends up leaving the woman that he's with and has nowhere to go. Completely broke, sold the bar, everything's a mess. And we're talking again. So he moves in with me. So I'm about 25. My dad moves in with me, and I just so happen to have my sister, getting custody of my sister. So my dad was a saving grace. My dad helped me raise my mother's daughter while my mom was kind of still out there, because she was in the heat of her addiction. She was in and out of jail. And he hooked me up. Now my family knows a lot about the system. So my dad's like, Geri, you should be, you know, I know you're doing good, because at that time I was in radio advertising, and I was way before I went back for psychology. He's like, I know you're doing good with your money and all, kid, but you know, you could be getting a check for this kid. Like, why not call CYS? So not because of the check part at all, but I called CYS because what they gave my sister was mobile therapy services. So I ended up getting a mobile therapist that came out to my house, a behavioral specialist, and I got support from CYS, which was like something I wasn't used to because I was always scared of CYS, right? So they came out and they started to offer counseling services to my sister because she was like in pieces when I got her. Behaviorally, a lot of abandonment stuff, and she would test her limits with me because everybody that ever had her always kind of left her. So she would do, you know, subconsciously do everything she could to test me to see if I would leave her too. I never left her, but I did want to choke her. So we kind of together, and my dad helped. And my dad was called her foster. My dad became her foster father. So it's FF, right? Or the initials. When my dad died, and my dad was a big singer for a group called the Destinations, and he loved music. So my sister got the G clef behind her ear and an F to the second power for F squared, because he was her foster father. And that's what she called him, F squared. And it was cool because it was cool for all of us, because God knows I needed the help, and my dad was there to help. And my dad felt like, because I got to have some pretty deep conversations with him, he felt like he was paying it forward by helping to raise my mother's child, because he had treated her really badly and thought that he blamed himself for how bad her addiction became. So for him, he felt like he was able to kind of help. And at that point, I was like angry at my mom and pissed off, right? And I still had resentment towards my dad in a way, but I was just so happy to kind of have him back in my life, away from, you know, the woman and stuff he was with. And I remember my dad, and this what really sparked my interest too. I remember having this deep conversation with my dad. Now, mind you, he was drinking, but he would drink at night, right? He would start drinking at night. And that's the way my dad justified his alcoholism. Well, I don't drink during the day. I don't hurt anybody. I drink at night. So we would get into these deep conversations. And my mom at this time got busted. She was in jail for retail theft because she was using heroin. She's supporting her habit. And I was like, I hate her. Like, I don't want to talk to her. I don't want to see her. I don't want to do anything. And he looked at me and he's like, kid, she's sick. And this also kind of like, I was like, man, maybe this is a disease. She's sick. Because I thought that, like, I'm probably going to cry. I thought she didn't love me. And like, how can she do this to like me and my sister? So I'm going through like all this stuff, right? And I'm like, how can she do this to us? And then he told me she was sick and that she loved me the best way she knew how. And I was like, shit. I think I wanted to believe him. Like, you know what? Like, why would she want to be a jerk to me and my sister? And that did it for me. And then I was like, I'm going back to school to learn more about this. And then he said to me, now you got to go up and put money on her books. He's like, you got to see her. He's like, you got to visit your mom. Don't leave her high and dry in jail. Like, just visit her. I can reassure you, I know her better than anybody. And I know that she loves you. She's just sick. So hearing that to me was a game changer, because that's when I was able to actually be more empathetic. Sorry, I don't mean to cry. I'm still crying. I wrote a friggin' book and I've been through this 100 times and I still cry. So sorry about that. But yeah, that was a huge game changer for me. Yeah, but my sister, to answer, my sister's good. She's 26. She's in therapy. Why wouldn't she be, right? Like, we should all be in therapy. She's in therapy, and her dad died in 2017 of a fentanyl overdose. My sister was his only child, and we had to go down and take him. My poor sister had to take him off of life support, and my mom was there too. So we all went down. So that did a number, because she was insistent on staying in the room. I don't know if she thought he was going to come back to life, but when they did the whole thing, she stayed there by his side and took him off life support. And she holds a lot of guilt because he had relapsed, and my sister got angry. We're kids of addicts. We're allowed to get angry, right? And she got angry because he relapsed, and she told him, I never want to talk to you again. I don't give a shit if you overdose and die. So that's the last thing she said to him. And she thinks that if she was nicer, this is what she said, if I was nicer then maybe things would be different. And how do you like, no, this is not your burden. Like his addiction was not your burden. It's not your fault. He did what he did and it is what it is. So now she's dealing with that. She works in an addiction clinic as a medical assistant, and she gives people their Vivitrol injections, and, you know, she's doing it up and she's trying the best that she can. She did kind of, you know, she did the whole weed thing, and she thinks that I got this, I can do this. And now she's starting to see that that got to be a little bit too much. So chronic marijuana use started to kind of creep up. And then once that got to a level where she felt like she wasn't getting high anymore, she kind of dipped her toe into, you know, trying pills. And then we very, very quickly, I thought I wanted to kill her, but I pretty much was like, let's go. You're going to get help right now. And I got her into an IOP program, and, you know, she's good. She's in the field, she's in therapy, she's not messing around, and she's helping people with addiction too. It's her kind of drive, like it is mine, because she says things to me like, I couldn't save my dad, so maybe I can help other people. And what's really cool is, like, when you work in the field, like, yeah, you can read like 100 textbooks and you can take 100 courses, but when you work in the subspecialty of addiction, I feel like you can really make an impact on people who are getting into recovery, because if they know that you know what time it is, they know that you're not judging them. And then that's how my sister's approach is, and that's how mine is. And that kind of lends itself to people being more honest with you. So she's doing her thing. She's getting married in February. She's been with the same guy who I love for 8 years. And she was at my house yesterday for Easter with my mom and the rest of my family. So she's doing the best she can. All right. Have you had to consider yes. Oh my God, Jacqueline, have I had to consider limiting my relationship with my mother? Hell yeah. So I did the whole enabling thing for years. So I remember being in high school, and my mom would come up at 5 a.m, right? And she would be crying at the end of my bed saying, I waitressed in high school to make, you know, just give me 20, I got to get a couple bags. I'm dope sick. Like I need it. So there were times when I was like, just, you know, fine. Like, I don't, you know, when your mom is crying in front of you, just like if it's your child, right? Like, I'm sure there's people on here that have like adult children. You're like, shit, take the $20. Like, I don't want you to be sick. I did that more times than I could count, right? I'm like, I don't want you to be sick, because then the promise was, if you just let me get these couple of bags, I'll come right home and I'll try to act normal. So I was like, yeah, here you go. And then I realized that was like not good. And, you know, I remember her, I would sleep with my money in my pillowcase, because I knew she would steal my money. And I guess one night I rolled over and she took my $300 that I had from my college applications. And I was like, son of a bitch. So at that time I was with my boyfriend at the time, and his mom had overheard me and him talking. I was like crying, and she was awesome. Her name was Mrs. Hagen. She actually gave me the $300 for my college applications. But so I did the whole enabling thing, right, for years. And I listened to the stories, the most elaborate stories you'll get. You know, they robbed, you know, this happened to me, I got robbed, or, hey, my check's coming in a couple of days. If you can just wire me this, and then I could transfer that. And I mean, I heard it all. I did it all. I fell into every trap. Then I got smart, right? After being through it, I was like, Mom, I love you to death, right? I want to choke the shit out of you, but I love you to death. I can't do this anymore. I don't care where you are. I don't care if you're in the middle of Kensington, which is a bad neighborhood, and it's 3 o'clock. When you're ready to get help, I will be the first one to come get you. But I can't do it. So there would be times, months that would go by when she was using, that she finally knew that she wasn't going to pull one over on me. But she did call. She called 3 o'clock. I'll come get you right now. Let's go. And then we would go to rehab. I did the same thing December 4th. I hadn't talked to my mom since this past December, because she was drinking and she was using pills. And I think she got high on dope a couple times. And I had to separate myself. I'm like, I can't do it. You know, I blocked her on Facebook. I blocked her because she gets real vicious. You know, it's like, it becomes our fault, right? Like, you fucking piece of shit. How you going to do this to your mother? You know, the whole 9 yards. So I blocked her. And then I got a call from the cops. And they're like, yeah, is this your mother? I'm like, oh God, still embarrassed, like all these years later, right? I'm like, yes, that's my mother. Well, listen, we have her at the hospital. We're taking her blood for a DUI, but if you come and get her from the hospital, then we won't have to put her in the holding area, and then you can just come get her and like we'll release her to your custody. So I said, fine, I'll come. So I rolled up. She's trashed. I'm like, look, you got two options right now. Either I'm just gonna leave, or we're gonna go to rehab. And then right then and there, she's like, I'm tired. And then she starts crying because she's like, I'm so sick and tired of being sick. And I'm like, all right, Mom, like, let's do it. Like, I don't want to hear about tomorrow. Don't tell me your check's coming. You got to pay your word, but I don't give a shit. I'm like, we're going to go now. And she did. And we went in, and I went the whole way with her and went as far as I could into the building. And it was weird because I know all these people in the industry, and I've never reached out to them before. And I actually called the chief medical officer. I've never done it before. And I said, I need your help. Because it's during COVID. I said, I need to get her in like right away, or she's going to die. Like, that's going to be it. And he was awesome. It was cool to see, like, he wasn't judgmental. I was like, well, people are really cool. Like, and yeah, so that's what's going on. And that's how I draw the line. If she relapses, we don't talk. But again, you could call me and I'll come take you to rehab and get you help anytime. That's how I manage that with my mom. I'm just trying to think. It would be so wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. What is your best advice for parents of addicts? It's hard because I had to listen to the advice myself, even though like kind of the roles are reversed. The best advice that I could give, and somebody told me this a long time ago and it resonated, you can't take credit for someone's recovery, just like you can't blame yourself for their disease. I don't give a shit, and I curse a lot, this is Philly me, if you weren't the best parent in the world. I don't care if you did X, Y, and Z, ABC, I don't care what it was. You cannot blame yourself for what's going on right now with somebody in active addiction. That's the first thing. So I want to give you permission, and I just want to tell you, as somebody that's lived through it on the other way, that it's not your fault. Yeah, you weren't the perfect parent. None of us are. You're going to fuck your kids up somehow, right? Like, you're going to mess your kids up somehow. I'm neurotic, so I know some way my kids are going to be screwed up. And that's just the reality. No one's perfect. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is get yourself therapy. Because yes, like, it's really terrible when you can't go to sleep at night because your 30 something, is out there doing something that they shouldn't be doing. Like, I know that's terrible because I had the same feeling with my mom. But I think getting your self-treatment, because when I got my self-treatment, that really, really worked wonders for me. And I mean like treatment. I don't mean talking to your best friend on the phone that knows all your family secrets. Like, I mean like treatment. So that's what I would suggest is getting treatment. And then I know it's hard because I've worked with, parents who said to me, what am I going to do? My daughter said she's going to go out and prostitute. And if I don't give her 20, like, what am I going to do? And I get it. But I think drawing boundaries for yourself and for, the person struggling is important. And for me, it was enabling for over a decade. And then my boundary was, I don't care if you told me to drop dead, if you did that. When you're ready, you call me and I will be the first one there to take you. So that's my advice is professional help. Forgive yourself. You're not perfect. None of us are perfect. It's not your fault. And even though they're going to tell you it's your fault, especially if you're not giving the money for dope, it's your fault. You were a terrible mother. You're a terrible father. Go to hell. You weren't there for me. This happened to me. Yeah, okay, we know, because you're going to hear that part of the addict talking, and that's the active addiction spewing hate at you because they want to use, and they're going to say what they need to say to get that money. So keep that in mind. And then, the last part is treatment. Be nice to yourself, be kind to yourself, and when they're ready, you roll up and take them. But when you pick them up, don't do any of this shit. Well, I got to go cop one more time and I got to do. No, you do your dirt and then I'll come pick you up and then I'll take you to where you got to go. I think that's the best advice that I have because that's what I did for myself. Okay. I don't enable, but I do reach out to her. So, Paula, you got to take, I learned how to take care of myself, right? Through all of this too. And if you want to reach out to your son or your daughter, then you do it. If it's going to help you feel better, but you have to have zero expectations when you reach out. And the other thing is, depending on where they're at, if they're in active addiction, that conversation may not end that well. Because if you don't give them what they want at that time, if they're still in active addiction and they want money or they want this, the conversation's probably going to go left and you're going to be the bad person at the end and you guys are going to say hateful shit to each other and then hang up. So I think if you're just aware of that and you have zero expectations, that's the other thing. If she has a phone, I think a text message is cool, because sometimes just sending a text, I love you, I'm thinking about you, when you're ready for help, I'm here. Put that shit on repeat every single day and send the same message. You know, I love you, I'm here for you, and when you're ready for help, I'm here. And then they know that you love them and that you're thinking of them, and that when they're ready, and say, I'm not going to ask you questions about where you've been, who you've been with, what you're doing. Like, don't do the like mom or dad thing. That's not an interrogation. Just when you're ready, I'll take you, and I love you, and I'm thinking about you. And then that's it. I don't know if there's any, I'm reading stuff here. Oh, you're welcome. Any other questions?
Yeah, I'm not seeing any questions either. I noticed that you were getting some that I haven't been seeing, so I was not interjecting. I think some are being sent privately to you.
Hello, I'm Rick. I'm grateful recovering addict. Jerry, that was awesome. I was just texting her, telling her how good it was that I got to go to my own meeting now. But I was the same way, girl. Both sides of the fence. A recovering addict, children as born in addiction, and are still in addiction, and one that already just passed away last August due to the fentanyl overdose. But we've all lost them. Your story is just phenomenal. You know that, you came up and still said no. No to it, because that disease can just eat away at you. It's like having God on one shoulder and the devil on the other, and your head's in the middle going, what the fuck am I going to do? What am I going to do now? You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times, because you come from that background, it's so easy to slip in and just say, I give up, and I'm going to slide right back with it. And, I'm just so happy that you had that willingness and the strength just to say no. Everybody recovers at their own pace, their own way. It's just like, say you and your sister or whoever, have surgery, you're going to recover in your own ways. It could be opposite. Some take longer, some take shorter. It's the same thing with this. Some will go that route and some won't. But it's more that will just follow that route when they just don't know which way to go, have nobody to really tell them. And I'm honest to God, your parents, I think, are awesome, even though they used to give you that kind of education and to talk to you in the way, because I know many other addicts, believe me, and their parents. I know, being a parent myself, that same way, we didn't give a shit. You know what I'm saying? We gave up. We were so self-centered in this, and self-absorbed and everything else that goes with the disease that, we gave up on our kids and our family. And hell, some say I lost my family. No, we didn't lose our family. We gave them away is what we did. So, because we have choices, we just made the wrong choices. So outside of that, I'm glad you went the path that you did, girl. I really am.
Thanks, Rick. You're awesome.
You. And now I'm on my way to my own Zoom meeting in Nebraska. So thank you. God bless you. Good to see you, Lauren and Dora. It's been an honor seeing you again. I love having you guys in my corner too.
Oh, thanks. Bye, Rick.
Thanks, Rick. You're awesome.
And like I always say, good night, John Boy.
Thanks so much. Were there any other questions or comments? All right, then I think we'll end it here. I guess I do have one little question that is a little bit outside of it. Everything is centered around your history and your story, kind of what took you to this point. Yeah. I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about the work that you do with people who are incarcerated.
Yeah. So that's I love doing that work, because I was always visiting people in jail. So it's nice, feel like you're kind of home, right? So what's interesting about that is I work as a private practitioner on psychological evaluation. So I will get tapped by a judge or by the probation department, and they'll ask me to do a psychological evaluation on an individual who's incarcerated to find out a couple of things. One, I assess their appropriateness for participation in drug court or for their participation in a behavioral health court program. And then the other end of that is assessing their mental health so that the court can kind of look at what their treatment's going to be post-release, and they kind of use those treatment recommendations as part of their probationary guidelines. And then I'll just do, assessments too, to get somebody prepped to go from the county to the state, or get them prepped for, for trial, to see if they're competent to participate in trial proceedings. So, that's what I do on the adult side. And my colleague still works on the juvenile court side. So we do the same thing. The practice does the same thing for juveniles.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think, seeing no other questions or comments, I do just want to say that your story is amazing. Are you seeing any question or comment that I'm not seeing?
Nope, I think I think I'm good. Yeah.
Your story is amazing, and I think that your background and what you learned through it makes you such an amazing psychologist and therapist doing the work that you do for people who struggle with the disease that your parents have struggled with. So it's been an honor having you as our speaker. So so thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Dara, Lauren, thanks again. And thanks for allowing me to share my story. And I hope at least, this helped one person. So thanks a lot, everyone.
I'm sure it did. And just
Thanks for sharing.
Yes, just in closing remarks, I just want to remind you all that our public forums are the first Monday of every month. So that means that our next one is going to be May 3rd at 6:30. Please keep an eye on our Facebook page for the event posting and for more information about what that forum is going to be about. Don't forget that we have a YouTube channel, NW Wayne Fan. This program is going to be on that YouTube channel as well as prior ones. And if you have any questions or comments or concerns about anything, feel free to shoot us an email at nwwayne@familiesagainstnarcotics.org. And that will conclude our April public forum. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Geri Lynn.
Yeah, thanks again, Geri Lynn. It was great.
Thank you.